Yeah, welcome back, and this is Good Morning Nigeria. And to begin our conversation on tackling cybercrime in Nigeria, here's a background report by Ibrahim Hamidu.
Cybercrime is on the rise in Nigeria, threatening not only the economy but also the financial security and personal data of everyday citizens. Imagine receiving a suspicious text message from your bank or having your social media account hacked for malicious purposes. The reality of cybercrime hits close to home. Recently, there has been a surge in phishing attacks, online scams, and data breaches. It's not just about financial loss. Our security and identity are at stake. The statistics are alarming. According to the Nigerian Communications Commission, cybercrime costs Nigeria over 150 billion naira annually. Behind these numbers, real Nigerians struggle to make ends meet. Many have lost significant amounts, up to 500,000 naira, to online scams disguised as legitimate business investments. The emotional toll is just as devastating. To stay safe online, cybersecurity experts recommend verifying information before clicking on links, using strong passwords and two-factor authentication, keeping software up to date, and being cautious of unsolicited emails or messages. Cybercrime threatens our digital lives, but collective action can combat it. Vigilance, cooperation, and a commitment to justice are crucial. As Nigerians, we must safeguard our digital future for ourselves, our children, and our nation. The question remains, are we ready to take the fight online? Don't go away. It's tackling cybercrime time on Good Morning Nigeria. Our experts will share exclusive insights and actionable tips to reinforce your online data firewall defenses. Stay tuned for more. You are just a click away from securing your digital life.
Thank you, Ibrahim Dan Amidu, for that background there. And we already have our guests seated in the studio to discuss the tackling cybercrime in Nigeria. Let me introduce first the Commissioner of Police in the person of Uche Ifeanyi Henry, is the Director, Nigeria Police Force National Cybercrime Center. Also, Chairman, Interpol African Working Group on Cybercrime. CP, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Also joining us here is Abdul Karim Ajijola, is the Chair, African Union Cyber Security Expert Group. Abdul Hakim, I beg your pardon, Abdul Hakim Ajijola, Chair, African Union Cyber Security Experts. You're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning.
And still seated here in the studio is Barrister Emmanuel Edet. He's Acting Director, Regulation and Compliance Department, National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA. It's good to have you join us again. It's been a while.
Yes, quite a while. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's kickstart our conversation this morning. Let's lay the foundation for, what cybercrime is all about. Maybe we'll start with the CP. You tell us what exactly is cybercrime, the prevalent types of cybercrimes in Nigeria, and how they have evolved over the years.
Okay, cybercrime started a long time, during when some of our threat actors were using fax machines, to write letters to the Oyibos, telling them one story or the other that would lure them, into investment. But at the end of the day, the money they will pay in will be cornered. That was when cybercrime started. It's not something that just started, of recent. Now, when we talk about cybercrime in particular, it's all about using electronic devices, the phone, the laptop, the iPads, to commit crime online. And they must have of course, they must have a network to be able to complete the cycle. So cybercrime is we all know, the trend is actually on the increase. So that was why the government decided to establish the Nigerian Police Force National Cybercrime Center so that we'll be able to tackle this menace. Of course, because it's something that requires tech approach. Of course, for you to be able to handle issues concerning electronic devices, you must have the requisite knowledge on how tech works. So for you to be a cyber expert or cyber investigator, you must have acquired the skills, that will enable you to navigate in your investigations.
Okay, thank you so much for your opening comment there on cybercrime, because we're trying to establish what it means now. And, most experts say that it's a multi-stakeholder approach that is needed to fight cybercrime in Nigeria. I'm bringing in Mr. Edet into this conversation now. As part of NITDA, you've helped to fight cybercrime in Nigeria and to bring awareness to it. So what is your greatest concern?
Thank you very much for the question. I think one of the greatest concerns that we have is our lack of awareness in terms of people using devices and using technology, so to speak. The whole essence of promoting the digital economy, which is part of our mandate in NEDA, is to ensure that you create a trust environment where people can feel confident to use digital devices for economic activities in such a way that it becomes beneficial to the citizens and provides digital opportunities. But for those who use these digital devices, the threats that are available, like the CP mentioned, are usually not explained to them, so to speak. I mean, sometimes you see a free software and you download it, and as my brother Hakim would always say, if it's free, you're probably the market, or you're probably the subject that is being traded. So the absence of awareness for most people that adopt digital technologies is one of the greatest concerns. And it's not just about being aware. Some people even know the dangers involved and they still go ahead and do it because it's simply convenient at the time. But sometimes the risk far outweighs the benefit, and it causes a lot of long-term damage, which in turn erodes confidence in the use of technologies. I've met a few people that would never touch an ATM card as far as they are concerned as an avenue for milking their money. So it's this kind of issues around people being aware of the risk involved in using technologies, managing your device, explaining to your children the issues around them having access and using your device, as well as ensuring that you don't just connect to any network, because somebody might just make that network available to lure you in order to have access to your banking codes and all. So I think awareness is one of the greatest challenges that needs to be addressed as far as the use of digital technologies vis-a-vis cybercrime is concerned.
Awareness, lack of awareness. I mean, everything borders on awareness, and people are not well educated before they, plunge into all this. And is really because I've fallen victims before. One in every 4 Nigerians have been a victim one way or the other, because I could recall sometime last year, somebody sent me a text from a colleague of mine. I thought it was a colleague of mine asking for urgency, that needed money, that he would pay me back in a moment and all that. So I just sent the money. Then I now entered the studio and I saw the guy. I said, "Oh, are you okay now?" I said, "Okay, how?" He said, "You just sent me a text that I should send you money." He said, "No. Somebody called me too that I sent a message like that, and that kind of a thing that has been going around and around." I said, "Wow, I just sent you money." He said, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It wasn't me. It's all these cybercrime people." So let me just come to you now. How prevalent is this kind of, cybercrime issues in this country?
Well, I think it's not just simply in this country, it's all over the world. But, Africa, for example, is estimated to lose in the range of about $4 billion a year. So, it's not restricted to us. But at the same time, I think, like the CP and EDET have said, we need to be a little more aware. I think we need to apply a little more critical thinking. And certainly, from the example of your case, we need to be a little more skeptical.
Yeah.
And at least try to maybe verify. But again, with all technologies, whether it is a vehicle, whether it is digital, when they are new, of course, there will be a lot of misunderstandings and people take advantage of these things. And so it speaks a lot to also, I think, our social circumstances that it is growing. Because certainly as a society, we can use these technologies for good. It's just like a cutlass. You can use it to cut, the farm, and plant.
Yes.
But at the same time, you can use it to intimidate people. So many a time, it's actually, we have to focus on the human being, especially the perpetrator, and sadly also we have to find ways to look after the victims.
Okay.
What about you talked about the role that individuals, organizations, and maybe government agencies need to play. What roles do you think the organization, individuals, and government agencies need to play, in showing up, awareness, this?
Well, first of all, I think there are a number of issues that require what I would call societal conversations.
Yeah.
For example, you see these criminals operating on some of these networks. How far as a society are we willing to allow, for example, our police to go in order to go after these people? Because in going after these people, they may have to infringe, on something that we regard as our right.
Okay.
For example, should the police or security services be allowed to monitor our social media? We have to have those conversations as a society and agree, and then we can say, Oga CP, these are the boundaries, for example, of how far you can go. So again, there's a lot that we have to discuss as a society. But back to the specific stakeholders, because you mentioned, very importantly, multi-stakeholder. First and foremost, government owns the right to supervise, regulatory rights, and the legislation. But the private sector, by and large, owns the infrastructure. Okay? You now have civil society. They are very, very good at basically making sure that there's a high level of accountability, not just from government, but from the private sector.
Okay.
You need academia, because the academics key in with the research and development in order to make sure that we understand the problem and seek pathways. It is the innovators that take the output of the research and development as products to market that can keep us safe. We also need the media to what we are doing today to increase this awareness. But the bottom line is that we need the citizen to also take responsibility. If you go to the market and you park, for example, your motorcycle and it's stolen, and you go and report to the policeman that you left your key in the motorcycle, what really do you expect him to do? So we also have to understand that, for example, your reporter in the introduction talked about passwords. You need to regard password as either your signature or the key to your house. Now, ordinarily, you wouldn't give the key to your house to a stranger. Likewise, you shouldn't give your password to it. We have to be able to make those kind of analogies so that people can see, oh, my password can open the door, to my private part, so to speak, or, of my life.
Okay.
Yes, I keep telling people when maybe a group we have on WhatsApp is hacked, and I tell them, why don't you go for the two-step verification? It's just easy, do it before
But
you know.
It's not perfect, ma.
It's not perfect, I know, but,
But
it's
it's
sort of
better than
it's
not
better
having
than
it.
it's better, and while we're trying to establish what cybercrime is and what it constitutes, let's begin to look at the causative factors that causes vibrant, intelligent, some well-educated people to go into cybercrime. Is a huge crime, actually, and it's all around the world. And what amazes me while I was doing the research is Nigeria is number 5. Russia, Ukraine, Romania, Nigeria, and then China And, you know, Nigeria is number 5 out of all the countries.
With all
in the
our
world.
infrastructure challenges.
Yes, yeah. It's a scary situation. And so I'm coming to CP Uche now. What do you think causes people to go into this kind of crime? And this is the crime that hits people, destroys lives, and some people even commit suicide when they are duped like that online. What is the causative factor that causes people to go along this line?
Anyway, thank you for that question. There are a whole number of factors. You know, so many people believe that it's as a result of unemployment. Some believe it's as a result of poverty. But I don't believe that. From my own perspective, I think that the major propelling factor, you know, to cybercrime is advancement in technology. Advancement in technology is good to us, you know, to humans. But then, looking at the challenges, because I mean, the technology that is meant for the good, that is the same technology the threat actors and the bad guys, that's the same technology they use. There's no market where they sell phone to cyber criminals. There's no market separate where they get some of those devices. It's still the same thing that we use. So as I said, technology and advancement is very good to mankind, but then we really need to look at some of those factors, because if you check the population of those that uses smartphone devices now in Nigeria, let's say cellular phone is about 205.4 million people, you know, that uses cellular phones. Then down to the smartphones is about over 50% of our population, about 102 or 104 million people. So you now look at those that use it, you know, genuinely to receive calls for adverts, you know, for a whole lot of things to make a living. You now check about those that use the same device, you know, to commit crime. You understand me? So I look at some of these factors as you know, some of the things that generate, you know, that make people to go into it. Yes, somehow unemployment, but I believe that someone that can afford data, that can afford smartphone is not poor. It's not because of poverty. That's my perspective. It's not because of poverty. It's because that individual wants to go into crime. Because, I mean, if you check the situation of things in Nigeria, where you look at the cost of fuel, you look at the cost of buying solar, and of course to pay for NEPA bills, the Zone A, is this Zone A or what they call it?
Band A.
Band A.
Okay? So it's very expensive. Do you
It
understand
is.
me? So for you to be able to afford all those things means you're not poor. Okay? That's the way I look at it. So it's just like someone that can afford, that can raise like 500,000. Okay, you can actually use it to go into a very good business that will help you to survive. But some of these devices that we have, some of them are no less than 1.5 or 2 million naira for good smartphone, the iPhones and the other Android phones. So I don't see it. I don't see poverty as a propelling factor. I see it because an individual is a criminal. I see that as an individual want to go into crime. And that's exactly why, you know, they go into crime. Of course, you see the kind of money they make at the end of the day. Now you look at some of our youngsters that are in secondary school. They are in school. Now you ask yourself, why are they getting into this crime? So peers, you know, looking at some of their peers, you know, the way they live their life.
Peer influence.
The peer influence. You know, the way they live their life, the way they brandish, you know, money made from illicit funds, you know, from cybercrime. Looking at some of those things, you know, still see some of them getting into crime. Because I had one case that we handled where I interrogated a boy of 13 years, you know, that got himself involved in the crime. And I asked him, why did you decide to get into this crime? So he said that his friend pulled him into the crime. Now there's one other one we arrested that used a profile picture of one of our government officials, senior government official in Nigeria, to scam a lot of people. So it's about 12 years old. So it's a societal thing. So when we interrogated the guy said it was the mother that bought the laptop and took him to a cyber criminal, to
The
train
mother?
him, yes, to go into crime. So you look at some of these disturbing factors. So you now ask yourself, what is actually the problem? Is it the parents? Is it the peer influence? Or advancement in technology? So there are a whole lot of propelling factors.
So our value system itself is degraded in such a way that parents encourage.
Yes, most parents. In fact, there was one story, unconfirmed, that I heard that they have mothers association of Yahoo mothers in some part of Nigeria. So I had some of those things. So and even like some of the mentorship school we busted, in Abuja, where they mentor young stars, young Nigerians on how to hack, on how to go into business, email compromise, romance scams, extortion, which is on the increase in Nigeria.
It is.
Because before now, we were not recording cases of extortion like that. But early last year, we started having the surge, Most of the victims of sextortion usually come from Asia, some part of Europe, and America. I mean, romance scam, but sextortion mainly America. Some of the underage have actually committed suicide. So you now look at the trend, the way it's rising. That's why they say it's number 6. Nigeria is number 6.
Number 5.
Number 5, But even at that, I don't still believe that Nigeria is number 5. Looking at it, because one, there is no known cyber gang in Nigeria. But sorry to say this, the media is not actually helping us, because it's what you give out. The social media and all the rest. It's what you give out. That's what they use outside Nigeria.
As statistics.
Right? Now, my chairman will agree with me that there is no known cyber gang in Nigeria. Just like the Hot PTI, the WannaCry, where you have, very big sponsored gangs all over the world, which is known. So when I see, them showing that Nigeria is number 5, it gets me worried, because I don't believe that statistics is real. So, having said that, we still need to do a lot, because looking at cybercrime itself, it is a global problem. It's not a problem that is associated to Nigeria alone. It's a problem that affects the interests of the world, and it needs a global approach. Okay? And that's why when I was appointed the chairman, Interpol African Working Group on Cybercrime, I decided to reach out to my African colleagues, telling them that it's need for us to actually work together, that it's need for us to look at the problem as it is and how to tackle it. Because if you don't share information, if you don't talk to yourself at cyber investigators, if you don't educate your people, he talked about awareness. It's very key and very important. Now, after awareness, we still need to work with the tech officials, the tech partners, right? Because whether you like it or not, there is no way I can profile, for instance, an IP address without working with the ISPs. Right? Internet service providers. So you will need to bring the internet service providers on board, and they need to cooperate with us. Because if an account is being hacked, if there is a phishing link that is being distributed, you still have to work with the ISPs for you to be able to determine this ISP, where is it coming from? Who owns it? Where is the KYC? Do you understand me? So we have to work with the tech partners. We still have to go on serious awareness campaign, which we had one about 3 weeks ago, which we called it Secure Our World. Okay. So your people attended. We were able to reach out to a whole number of people. So this just major thing that I think that yes, the crime is on the increase. Now, some of the factors that I just enumerated, that I believe that major causes of, why people, our youngsters, decided to get into cybercrime.
Well, thank you very much, CP, for your, explanation there. Actually, this cybercrime issue is very worrisome. Let me bring in Barrister Edit, Emmanuel Edit. And you talked about the need for us to create more awareness. And I want you to explain, because you are the Acting Director, Compliance Department, National Information Technology Development Agency, NITDA. When we talk about phishing scams, we talk about ransomware, we talk about all these business email compromise attacks. Can you just explain so that people will understand what is phishing in cybercrime, what is ransomware in cybercrime, what is email compromise? Because all these people do not have a grip of what you are talking about. But just let's lay it out, in layman's language, so that we can start the awareness now, so that people will begin to understand that when you do this, this is what you are attracting. You understand? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
So let's start with phishing.
Yeah.
I know it's spelled Phishing,
Yes.
but in terms of analogy, let's
Yes.
just consider it like a fish on a hook. So like you have your regular fishing, you go to the river, you throw a hook, and then any fish that fancies your bait bites on it and gets hooked and gets pulled out of the water. So that's the physical analogy, and that's the technological analogy. So usually in a phishing attack, the idea is to have access to information that has to do with your passwords, has to do with access to some of your bank accounts. So for example, they will clone a site that looks like your bank site, send you the link, and tell you, oh, we need to upgrade your ATM card. Please give us the number of your card and the PIN. And we have to understand that in this era of digital technologies, your identity has been digitized. So your identity now turns to figures. So if I have those figures, I can actually pretend I am you and get the benefits you are entitled to. So I can access your account, I can access probably your username and password for certain things. So phishing just simply is an opportunity for someone to get your access codes and then use it to extort you, usually move money from your bank account, etc., etc. There's also the ransomware attack you've mentioned. In that instance, it's usually a more sophisticated approach where you run your basic or important technological processes online, and then somebody plants a malicious ware on your system and then holds your system to ransom. It usually happens a lot in hospitals where you have patients' data has been digitized. Yeah, more or less like digital kidnapping. Yeah, that's a good word.
And they
from
tell you
Hakeem.
to pay money.
Yes, you are now asked to pay money into probably a Bitcoin account or something before they release your processes for you to continue working. Lives are at stake, and you'll be running pillar to post. You're faced with the social dilemma. Should I copy into these people so that I can save lives, or should I not submit to the criminals so as not to encourage them in future? So generally, most of these attacks are usually targeted. It's more or less like social engineering. They are usually targeted at the vulnerabilities of citizens. For example, you mentioned your experience as well. It happens a lot more than people realize. And so it should be a basic understanding that once you get a message that you should send money to somebody, verify from the person first. That should be your first step. Like we talked about two-factor authentication. Call the person, hear the person. Even if they say it's your brother or your son or your daughter, speak to the person first. Find out before you start engaging in that. So I think basically, irrespective of the nature of the crime, it's just for whoever is a potential victim to verify. When someone tells you, I have 10 million naira for you, all you need to do is just send me your codes, I'll put it in your account. You're supposed to think, why would someone just, out of random people, decide I'm the one to benefit from the 10 million naira? He has a brother or a sister or someone he can give. Why me? You know, those are the kind of things that that I think we should be thinking about as Nigerians. And like the CP mentioned, it's not just about the circumstances we find ourselves. It's our ability to think logically and be able to actually verify some of the stories you hear. And if we actually read those fine prints, because I know a lot of banks and technology companies have been sending awareness messages, but most times we don't read them because you don't just want to waste your time. But if we read those little snippets
That
of
can
messages,
save your life.
yes, they can actually save your life and protect you from all these different types of cyber crimes.
Actually, some of them do call and say, don't release your details to anybody.
Yes.
If they call you, they ask you for your PIN. The bank does not require your PIN. The bank does not do this and all
Yes,
that. They,
yes.
at least they call. I mean, your officers will call you to warn you of surge.
Yes.
So I think maybe some of these organizations are waking up to that.
Yes.
But we still need to do more,
yes,
to create more awareness so that people will not fall victims.
Yes, indeed.
You want to ask a
Yes,
question?
I want to ask Mr. Ajilola, while we talk about causative factors of cybercrime, most countries have had strategies and have been quite successful in combating cybercrime. What is the cybercrime security strategy that we have in Nigeria to protect Nigerians? Do we have any like that in place?
Yeah, you're asking when the CP is here.
You are the expert. The CP will talk about it. Yes. You are the chairman of the review committee. That's why I'm asking you about strategies
First of all,
and preventive measures.
First of all, before I go there, I think this issue of awareness,
Yes.
maybe part of the challenge is that when you send something for people to read to a population that is largely functionally illiterate, maybe the media you are using for awareness is not quite right. Maybe we should find ways to use traditional dance, cartoons,
Drama,
things that people can relate to much
Music.
better than music, precisely.
Nigerians like
Or-
music, drama, and all
I
that.
mean, I would love to see, and CP, maybe this might help, some kind of maybe a 419 character with a positive character in some of our soap operas.
Yes, it's possible. And
Yeah.
also, we
Yeah.
can also probably involve some of our influencers,
Yes.
the
Precisely.
traditional rulers, the churches, and
Especially
religious
religious leaders.
bodies and
Yeah.
all
Absolutely.
that.
The media,
That they begin
like
to,
what
you
we're
know,
doing now. Yes.
What is really right, sir? Because I remember we dished out tips,
Okay.
cyber tips. We'll do it every 2 weeks. But we discovered that, people were not actually reading. So we decided to, create little contents of 2 minutes,
Exactly.
video content that we pushed out. And I can tell you, we pushed out one clip. We had over 1 million views.
Wow.
Within 24 hours. So, it actually works. So
Okay.
instead of sending out tips for people to read, people don't read. And honestly, I
People
don't.
are always on the move.
But if
Yes.
if it's a little clip video,
Yeah.
you see it attracts attention.
Yeah, it's-
So we tried it and it worked out. So if you
especially
go-
when it's dramatized.
Exactly.
yeah, if
Okay,
you
let's
go-
talk about
anyway, not
the
to
security
sidestep your-
strategies
yes.
they're in place
So
now.
there are some instruments in place, as the CP had alluded to. We have the National Cybersecurity Policy and Strategy. Nigeria was actually one of the first countries, especially in Africa, to have such an instrument. And indeed, even our initial Cybercrime Act 2015, which was amended in 2024, again, we were among the first countries to have that. I am aware also that that's, there are other legislation or
Yes.
laws that need to be put in place. And those, to the best of my knowledge, the processes for those are being worked on. So having said that, you have to also contextualize, because yes, I know this program today is focusing on cybercrime, but actually it is crime generally
Generally, yes.
that is growing, not just in our country, but in our region. And so we have to keep interrogating why. And I think correctly, as the CP had mentioned, there is a fray of the fabric of society. And so for me, the question is, even if you have these instruments, which we do, one, how well are we implementing them? But also, how well can we implement them given the societal situation? So I think we have to also look at that. And when I say societal situation, it's not simply that, oh, times are hard, because they are. The question is, yes, times are hard, but are we actually functionally equipped, especially our young people? Is the education system doing the service sufficiently of equipping them to be able to make progress in more legitimate ways? Now, the challenge with illegitimate income is that these same youth, like you said, they see people making what they perceive as quick money, whether it is from drugs, whether it is from cybercrime, and indeed, in some cases, whether it's by following a politician as a thug,
Or banditry.
or banditry,
Terrorism.
exactly, terrorism. So, one has to ask these questions that, as a society, are we really doing enough to bring up our younger ones, to guide them aright? Because we will pay the price, and I would argue that we are currently paying the price for a lot of things we have not done, in the past. So having said that, the instruments certainly are there. Now, when you say the instruments are there, there's a note of caution. This environment, this technology is very dynamic. So, for example, an instrument that you did in 2015, frankly, by 2018, 3 years, is already getting obsolete. We just spoke about ransomware. Did it exist 10 years ago? Who knew about it? Phishing, 5-10 years ago. So
it evolves.
These things evolve. And so the instruments themselves, because we also have to keep in mind something. You may perceive something as a crime, but if there is no legislation that defines it as a crime and prescribes a punishment, it may be immoral. It may not sit well with you, but technically it's not a crime. And so that's why sometimes the legislation itself, you keep seeing the need for these constant updates, because new things are happening. That said also, sorry, I'm adding caveats. One of the things we need to do is also to equip our regulatory bodies, be it NITDA, be it NCC, be it NCCC. We have to equip them, at least legislatively, with some flexibility to be able to now go after those things that may not today be physically in the books. But we have to be able to find a mechanism to give them that scope, because things are always moving. And last but not least, I would say, a very senior person to me in Singapore, Barry Green, famously said, the cyber criminals operate at the speed of light.
Yes.
Law enforcement operates at the speed of law. So there's a mismatch. And that's the reason that you need to empower the law enforcement to be much more proactive. You need to be able to empower them with the legislation that gives them that flexibility. Because like I said, what is not defined strictly as a crime in a piece of paper called legislation, technically they can't prosecute.
Technically, are you saying that the
correct me if I'm wrong.
Cybercrime Act of 2015 does not encompass all these things?
How can it? Because there were some things that may not have been envisaged at the time.
Okay.
So that's why I'm saying that you need to have, my point is that you need to be able to consistently and regularly review.
Upgrade.
That's my point. It will never be, because human beings are creative. We will always come up with new criminal enterprises.
Yeah.
You see? So the legislation has to be able to keep up, and which means that also law enforcement has to be able to keep up. But you have to empower them to keep up. They don't just keep up by waking up in the morning. Whether it is continuous training, whether it is continuous exposure.
These criminals don't sleep.
They don't. And as the CP had said earlier, there are these gangs now around the world that actually operate as a business. they have a human resource department, they have a chief executive, they have an accounting department. So what they do is that they offer you cybercrime as a service. So instead of you to go and invest in the whole cybercrime infrastructure, architecture, thank you, all you do is you just rent their service for an hour, for a day, for a week, depending on what you need and where you need. So it's getting to that kind of sophistication where they are literally multinationals, in their own right. And these are what people like the CP are
That's
battling
quite
against.
alarming.
Okay, I wanted to ask the CP a question, but before I ask you that question, I want Barrister Edith to speak to what he just said concerning the legislation. Do you think we have adequate law, to fight it, or do we need to strengthen our legislation in this?
Well, I would agree with Mr. Jijola because we've been part of this process for quite some time. With the advent of emerging technologies, some of those provisions are quite, I won't use the word obsolete, but they do not do the regulatory capture of some of these activities. So take, for example, artificial intelligence is a very, very nice tool for you to deny liability when carrying out some of those activities.
Okay.
So I suggest that the policy needs to be reviewed. It's due for review anyway. It's supposed to be a 5 year,
Almost 10 years
yeah,
now.
a 5 year period. The law is supposed to be upgraded. There are certain issues around cybersecurity, which he did mention, that needs to go into some form of legislation to make it compulsory for certain gatekeepers. And like he mentioned, like Hakim mentioned a little bit earlier, the private sector are actually the custodians of most of the technology infrastructure we have. And if you need to enforce cybersecurity, you ought to give them some form of responsibility. And let's remember, the private sector is for profit. So there has to be some form of compulsion to put in some regulatory measures to ensure that they take certain steps which will cut down their overall profits at the end of the day. And they are not likely to do that unless they are compelled to do it. So yes, the laws need to be reviewed. We need to capture some of those activities that did not exist as at the time that the law was enacted. I remember when we started writing that law, spam was an issue. Today, spam is no longer an issue because you have enough storage. So you can send your spam, I'll store it, I don't have a problem with that. So these things evolve over time. And there's always a need to consider what is available today and how to address those issues. And like you mentioned, it's a constitutional issue. If you do not define it as a crime and prescribe punishment, you cannot, CP cannot arrest anybody.
So it's not possible without a legal framework to back it up.
Exactly.
Can I just ask you a question? If somebody is involved in a car accident, under our contemporary person, who do you hold primarily responsible?
It depends.
No, just quickly, we're on air.
If the person is
Who
involved,
do we hold responsible? Just give me one
maybe the
person.
driver.
The driver. So what happens when you have a driverless car?
That is the question now.
So my point is that that's I'm just trying to show why the
Yes.
legislation needs to evolve.
Yes.
That's just an example.
Need to be dynamic now because
Exactly.
the world
Yes, we
is
must have a
dynamic.
legal framework to back up the
Okay, CP. I just want, my question is this: are there sufficient penalties for cybercrime offenders in Nigeria? Do we have sufficient penalties? What are the penalties?
Of course, as prescribed, by our laws, the Cybercrime Act of 2015, that we're just discussing. That depends, the penalties you're talking about depends on the crime trend. Ranging from your level of involvement and all the rest. So looking at the crime trend, like the business email compromise, you talked about the ransomware attack, you talked about romance scam, phishing, DDoS attack, and all the rest. So it depends on your level of involvement and depends on the crime trend. So that's the way the penalties are equally allotted. Of course, there are penalties for
penalties after the fact. We, as a society, we need to have before the fact.
Before the
How
fact.
do we make sure people don't get there? I think that is very
Yeah,
important.
of course, the only way we can, make sure that people don't get there is the awareness we've been discussing about. Because, of course, let me tell you, the thing about cybercrime is that most times we enable 50% of the attack as individuals. Because if I deploy a phishing attack, a phishing link, and you're not expecting, a message probably from Ajidola or from me, and you click on it, or if a malware is deployed, and you see a link and you click on it, you've activated the malware, of course. And of course, we talked about hacking of WhatsApp, which is very, very rampant now. That almost every week I get close to 15, 20 reports. That's those that have access to my number and our e-reporting portal. How about those that don't have access? So for a cyber criminal to call you, that you're going to have a Zoom meeting in the evening with your estate people or with your school or
They do
with
that
your
a lot,
office,
actually.
and they will tell you to tell them to give them the 6-digit code.
Yes.
So if once you give out the 6-digit code, you've actually activated, enabled them to hack you out and use your WhatsApp the way you use it. So if you're not expecting a Zoom meeting, why would you give out why would you give out that number? So most of these things is what we enable. 50% of it we enable it. So because when you look at, at the level of involvement of the cyber criminals, they will try to use what they have to get at you. Like the phishing link, they will harvest your confidential information. They will dupe you to provide your confidential information. Ransomware attacks, sometimes even when you pay money for the ransom, it's just like case of kidnapping. Sometimes you pay, they'll still kill the individual. Same in ransomware attack. Sometimes you see pay for them to release your data, they'll still destroy your data. So these are some of the issues, concerning it.
Okay.
I think another factor which we should mention, since we are on air here, has to do with children. Post-COVID-19, we had provided access to a lot of children to study online. Now, a lot of those access is not regulated by parents, because parents are not even aware. The children are a bit sharper than the parents when it comes to access. And criminals have identified this. So that's another big vulnerability that needs to be addressed. Children need to be educated. Children need to understand that the person talking to you on that device is not necessarily your friend. So if you don't know the person physically, there is no need for you to have a conversation with the person online, because they do get information from these children, because they'll ask the children about the parents, ask the children where the parents work, ask the children the phone number of the parents, and the children just give it out because they don't feel threatened by whoever is at the other end. In fact, a lot of video games have chat sections, and these criminals go there waiting for children. So yes, we talked about awareness. Parents need to know that these devices are not necessarily just a tool for education. They open a whole new door to criminals.
A whole new world.
Exactly, to have access to information about you. And that's very, very important. It's a huge gap.
Very, very important. I want to follow up on that, because he said something earlier, the need for us to involve schools and educational institutions, in creating awareness, especially concerning children and the young ones. It's neat that, involving, carrying along, other organizations like schools and all that. How do we get them involved in this?
So NIDA has this framework we call digital literacy framework. And the essence of the digital literacy framework is to see how we can raise digital literacy to 90% in the next 5-10 years. The essence of the framework, which also includes cybersecurity awareness and cybercrime awareness, is to ensure that we work with schools, educational institutions, to build basic curriculum that would enable people who have access to devices to understand the nature of the devices, to understand what they can do on those devices, and to understand how they can protect themselves as far as those using those devices are concerned.
Okay.
Apart from that, also there's a lot of work we've done with NCC on child online protection as well, which is critical, because you're having a situation where you have teachers who are teaching children to survive 50 years from now. Are the teachers even aware of how to survive today? There's talk less of training the children to survive 50 years from now in a digital environment. And very soon, education is going to go online. It's already online.
It's already online.
In the first place. So how do you manage that kind of curriculum? Because criminals will design things for education as well, because that's their work. They sit down every day, innovate on how to get the latest trend and deal with the situation that arise. And so even when there is palliative, for example, they take advantage of that. So NIDA has been trying to work with the Federal Ministry of Education, upgrade curriculum, not only for educational purpose, but to build skills that are functional for the current society. Because we are seeing a trend where at some point, some of the curriculum do not match the requirements of work for today, even remote work.
The reality of the world.
Exactly.
Yes, yes.
So if you want to play in the global economy, for example, you have to have the skills someone in America has before you can get the kind of employment you require to make those dollars, so to speak. So the point is, beyond this also, there's the element of awareness to ensure that as people are learning how to use these digital devices, they're also aware of the risk involved in these digital devices. So we're working on the upgrade of curriculum and then awareness based on our digital literacy framework.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much. We will take a break now. When we come back, the conversation continues. Stay with us.
Yeah, welcome back to Good Morning Nigeria. We've been discussing combating cybercrime in Nigeria, and our panel of guests are still seated here in the studio. Mr. Ajijola, I want to come to you for you to explain something that while I was doing the research, I want to understand, and that is the 4 Ps of cybersecurity. They call it plan, patch, policies, and perfect. What does it actually mean here?
Well, again, I think the plan for me is actually the most important component, and that is the looking ahead. What is coming? What do we have to deal with? How do we organize, for example, our family environment so that our children don't have unnecessary exposure? Certainly, we need to. Sorry, I've forgotten there was a policy.
Yes, strategic policy.
Yes, well, it's not just the strategic policy, but it's also
security.
It's also the operational policy.
Yes, operational. Okay.
Because strategy tends to be at a relatively broad, high level, whereas you need to also go down into the weeds. The patching for me is more to do with, and again, it's an operational thing. What happens is that software, the engine of the computer, if I may call it that, is made by human beings and therefore is not perfect. Also, other human beings try to find loopholes and ways around it. So what happens is that you have the patches, again, like patching the road. From time to time, when there's wear and tear, you need to be able to put a little more coulter. It's not perfect, but it keeps the thing running smoothly. And you also block those loopholes or holes where bad actors can actually come through. So, in a sense, I hope that helps.
Yes,
in the translation.
So, how do you perfect it now? And the policies that will help perfect it?
Well, in life,
because the human mind is curious.
Perfection is a journey; it's not a destination. You see, so you continuously strive towards it, and part of that perfection, if I may again go back to, for example, the family situation, you have to keep reminding, you have to keep admonishing, you have to keep educating your children, but obviously for you to educate them, you have to educate yourself. And when I say education, I'm not talking of formal. I'm not even necessarily talking of books, although books is good, but you also have journals, you have magazines, you have YouTube videos, you have many of these. TikTok. They actually have on TikTok positive sources.
Yes, yes, I know.
You see, so one has to have, for me, the critical thinking skills. And because when we talk of crime, if I may say, 90% of the time we're saying after the fact. It's more important for us as a society to figure out what we need to do so that the fact doesn't happen. How do I make sure my child doesn't get into cybercrime? For me, that's a bigger question, because by the time the child has gotten into cybercrime, as CP would say, there's a lot of water that's gone under the bridge. So for me, that's part of where the perfection comes. What are you going to do for that stitch in time to save 9? What are you going to do ahead of time? And it doesn't mean that you must be continuously paranoid. But again, when you think of society generally, you tell your children, be careful when crossing the road. You tell them, if you go somewhere and you see trouble coming, you move,
Try to avoid it.
So you have to also empower them, because at the end of the day, whatever your child does, especially for a man, for example, they bear your name. So it does come back to you.
Yes.
And certainly there is no parent that wants to see their child in ignominy. Yes, the child may have, some fantastic trinkets or cars or whatever, but if for all of that they now end up going to jail, I don't think any parent, at least any sensible parent, wants this. So this is where those perfections come in. Now, like I said, the policies, just to go back to it, is at 2 levels. You have the strategic, which might be, for example, overall government heading. But even you as a parent, you do need to have some strategic policy. For example, are you teaching your child how to learn? Not simply to ingest and vomit. So even if you argue that the school system teaches that, are you teaching them at home how to observe, how to learn, again, critical thinking skills? Then you now get to those policies that are at the tactical level. So for example, you have a child in your house and the child has access to the computer. How do you position the computer? If you put the computer in this corner, for example, you want the monitor to face out. So as a parent, when you are walking by, you can glance what's on the screen. But if the child is facing out, then you have no idea
What he's doing.
what he's doing. And last but not least, as a parent, you want a relationship with your child whereby your child can talk to you. What we call safe reporting spaces. Can your child actually come to you and say, Daddy, Mommy, what is sex? I mean,
The child can be open.
somehow, yeah, without you going ballistic.
Yes.
I give an example with myself. When my children were very, very young and they were going online, I befriended them on Facebook, but I never spoke to, I didn't say anything. And it is sometimes you see something, you want to
React.
but you have to have the discipline not to. But maybe a month or so down the road, you bring it up as a side issue. By the way, do you know this doesn't work in this way? But ironically, I remember, again, this must have been maybe 15, 20 years ago, I set up email accounts for them where I had control so that I could see who was emailing them and approve, create an approval list, or who they were trying to email and approve. By the time they went to boarding school, the teacher set them up on a different platform that had none of these controls.
Okay.
So sometimes, even with the best of intentions, but I think for parents to take away, there are controls they can put in place on their, your TV, your laptop, your desktop. There are parental controls that you can put on 90% of them. Are you aware of them? Do you know how to activate them? Is a totally different issue.
Okay.
Because for me, cybercrime is a result. The question is, what do we do in advance so that that results. Sorry, I don't want to make you unemployed, TP. But my point is so that he doesn't have that burden. Prevention. What can we do?
To prevent.
To prevent.
The planning.
The planning,
Yes,
yes.
the,
Wow.
the first piece.
Thank you very much. CP, now, we're talking about tackling this cybercrime now. How do we combat it? We know that it's not limited. It's a global phenomenon. Is Nigeria in any way collaborating with international partners to combat this cybercrime issue?
Well, thank you very much. Nigeria is actually doing a lot, in that regard. As you all know, as I said before, it's a global problem. And for us, we believe that the only way we can solve this problem is for us to be able to, talk to our colleagues outside this jurisdiction, outside Nigeria. And the only thing is for our people to be cyber aware. It's not only in Nigeria, but outside Nigeria too. March this year, I was invited by Japanese National Police to discuss issues, concerning cybercrime and on how we Nigerians can actually help them, because they identified about 12 threat actors, linked to Nigeria that attacked their citizens. They had a lot of victims. You remember I told you that most victims that we've recorded in cases concerning romance scam are the Asians. So based on that, they identified and they invited us for a discourse. So I identified about 12 threat actors, and we were invited March this year. Within 2 months, 1 month, we were able to have a very serious breakthrough, and we arrested 10 out of the 12 threat actors, and we recovered 2/3 of the money stolen. So it was a very good thing for them, because they've been trying on how to broker that talk and relationship with Nigeria in particular, because some of the threat actors are traced to Nigeria. But I say that our people need to be cyber aware in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. We're talking about awareness, very, very key and very important, because the threat actors in Nigeria that scammed the Japanese victims, what they did was to create what they call a mediator. Now, a mediator was employed by the cyber criminals in Nigeria without knowing that they were working for the cyber criminals. So the victim will pay money into the mediator's account. Mediator will convert it into crypto and pay to the threat actors in Nigeria. So because they don't want direct link, between the victim and them directly. So it's between the victim, the mediator, and the threat actors. So if the mediators are aware that they are working for cyber criminals, at least they should have been able to report, to their government. So cyber awareness is the key, and for us to be able to wash our cyber hands. Cyber hygiene is very, very,
You
very
gave us
important.
a sheet, before the program started, you gave us a sheet of paper. What was it? I said if you were able to say it. Yes.
Okay,
yes,
okay.
yes.
Yeah, because we discovered,
Yes.
about these threat actors attacking victims outside this jurisdiction. So we decided to create what we call the e-reporting portal.
Okay.
And we've actually helped lots and lots of victims, both in Nigeria and outside, through our e-reporting portal.
Okay.
So what they do is just to go through to the e-reporting portal, drop your complaints. Of course, you're going to get a code, that will enable you to monitor your case.
So what's the portal?
So it's ncccc.npf.gov.ng.
Okay, it's on
So,
the screen.
It's
yeah.
on, it's on the screen, okay. Okay,
So when you go into the
we'll roll it now.
Yes, you're
Okay.
going to. Someone will respond to you immediately. We've recovered a lot of funds. We've helped a lot of victims, both within Nigeria and outside Nigeria, and it's very effective.
Is the only one? Do you
It's
have
the only
more
one.
than
Just
that?
mention all, so
Okay,
that
so
because
we
on the screen. Yes.
Okay, then we'll have our websites too, and our Instagram account NPF_NCCC, then our Facebook account Nigerian Police Force National Cybercrime Center. Then our Twitter account is Nigerian Police Force National Cybercrime Center. So through all these channels, you can actually reach us.
Okay,
And of
let's
course,
talk about arrest, the rate of arrest in Nigeria. You said we arrested 10 out of those 12. You know, in developed countries, usually, not romance scam or, you know, hackers, intelligent hackers, usually when they are arrested, the government tells them they cannot touch a computer for like 10 years, for 5 years and all that. You can't touch a computer. And some of them they are so brilliant that they are co-opted to help track other criminals. Is that done in Nigeria?
yes, of course. I will tell you clearly that there was one operation, international operation we had, joint operation with the Interpol, and it's called Operation Falcon 1 and Operation Falcon 2, Operation Delilah. In Operation Falcon 1, we were able to arrest one of the top 10 cyber criminals in the world. You know, Interpol declared him as one of the top 10 cyber criminals in the world. But one interesting thing is that the man did not even patrol any formal education, but was able to develop one of the best, you know, phishing links in the world. So when we arrested that youngster, we interrogated him. We discovered that the guy had a lot to offer. And instead of prosecuting him, we kept him, you know, to see how we can use him, how we can change him, you know, from what he's doing, and of course to tap from his word of knowledge, because he's very, very knowledgeable. So instead of prosecuting, that does not mean that we're not going to prosecute him.
Yes, you're still going to. Yes.
But for what we have, we'll just see how we can tap from his word of knowledge. Because of course, if you look at, and there is one program we were developing with the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Tech, you know, to see how we can bring up youngsters. Because what we see as frontline officers is worrisome. When you see some of these youngsters and you interrogate them, you interact with them, you see that they are very, very knowledgeable.
Yes.
Very knowledgeable in what they do. So we're now looking at, instead of going to conduct raids to pack all of them and convict, it's better we pull them to a pool, talk to them, and see how we can utilize, you know, some of the knowledge they have, you know, for our own benefit. Because if you check, like some of the softwares that we use, there are things that somebody else can actually develop for us. You know, like for instance, some of the solutions to renew it runs into billions of naira. You know, like we have the ones that we're about to renew now, runs into billions. It costs a lot of money. But if these are little things, small things that some of these young stars can actually do. So when you interrogate them, when you talk to them, when you interact with them, you see that they got a lot to offer. So we are now looking at, pulling all these, some of them together to see how we can put them off the street. We are pulling them off the streets. Government, empowering them to utilize the skill, in developing some of these tools and solutions that can actually help the law enforcement. Not only the law enforcement, can equally help the tech partners that we have, to be able to develop some of these things, and the country will be making a lot of money from the youngsters. So it's actually ongoing, and I believe that we're going to achieve, and it's going to help the nation a great deal.
Besides the victims reporting to the necessary authority, are there resources available for victims of cybercrime?
Yes, the recoveries. Okay. The recoveries, because if your case is reported, and of course, if it's investigated and there are recoveries, it goes back to the victim.
Yeah, recently I think you handed some money back to, was it a Brazilian or something? I think there was a romance scam, $54,000 or something. I think I read it somewhere.
We've handed over a lot of money to victims. To victims. And there are some cases that in the public domain, like some of the fintech companies that lost. They had a cyber attack. They hacked into their portal, into their system, and was able to move billions of naira. We made a lot of recoveries, and of course the money has been handed over to the victims, and we'll have about three that is actually ongoing, and we've made tremendous achievement. We've made a lot of recoveries,
Okay.
To that effect.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, Barrister Edith, I just want to ask you, how can we ensure a coordinated response to cybercrime among government organizations?
That's a very interesting question because it's a conversation we've had in a long while. Hakeem mentioned the cybersecurity policy and strategy. It actually provides for a governance structure on the responsibilities of various government agencies and regulators in the area of cybersecurity. Of course, when it comes to enforcement of cybercrime, we have the law enforcement agencies. They are technically responsible for dealing with criminals. But beyond that, the responsibility for ensuring that those gatekeepers actually perform the necessary functions to protect citizens and ensure cybersecurity ought to be another primary issue that government should address. Right now, the function is resident in the NCCC, that's the Cybersecurity Coordination Center. And the essence of the center is supposed to, apart from implementing the cybersecurity policy and strategy, also monitor how other agencies who have been assigned various tasks under the policy and strategy are carrying out those tasks to ensure the overall cybersecurity posture of Nigeria. That governance structure exists at the moment. We have not carried out enough studies to know if it's effective or not, but we are working on ensuring that as an agency, we carry out our responsibilities and encourage citizens also to carry out their responsibility. Because it's not just about the government alone. The government can only go that far. But self-defense is the first line of defense. And so creating that awareness for citizens to defend themselves, and also creating the knowledge, like the CP has mentioned, for citizens to know who is responsible for addressing their issues whenever those issues arise, is also another aspect of the entire governance structure. So for every regulator that has a responsibility in the digital space, cybersecurity ought to be one of those issues that the government agency should deal with. And beyond the government agency, there are various other stakeholders who are responsible or should be responsible, like the civil society organizations, the academia. We hope to see some form of research in the area of cyber security and cyber crimes as well, this research should also form part of the evidence-based foundations for developing government policy. And then, of course, we also talk about the private sector. What are the solutions that come out of the private sector to address cybercrime and cybersecurity issues? How do we build an innovative ecosystem, local for that matter? We all know the challenges we have with dollars. So how do we get the software, like the CP mentioned, that we can use locally to address our cybercrime and cybersecurity issues? So all this put together in that policy, it's supposed to generate a dynamic ecosystem that will ensure that everybody takes responsibility for dealing with cybersecurity issues. The NCCC is up and running. It's coordinating a lot of things at the moment.
Yes.
A lot of work.
As usual, the
time.
conversation gets more interesting when time is running out. Yes. So, gentlemen, we thank you so much for coming. Mr. Barrister Emmanuel Edet, Acting Director, Regulation and Compliance Department, National Information Technology Development Agency, NIDA. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure hosting you this morning. And Mr. Abdul Hakim Ajilola, Chair, African Union Cybersecurity Expert Group. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
And CP Uche Fayi, Director, Nigerian Police Force National Cybercrime Center. It's been a pleasure having you to shed light on combating cybercrime.
You forgot that he's also the chairman, Interpol Africa Working Group on Cybercrime.
Yes. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming. And that's Good Morning Nigeria for today. Another interesting topic will be discussed tomorrow. Do have a date with us. I am Juma Yesuf.
And I'm Ademola. Do enjoy the rest of your day.